the booth. I only say what is true. She don't know Jimmy Choo.
What up, though, J Nation? It's your boy Jay Pitts. You are watching J Nation TV. It is Tuesday, and I usually don't ever do Tuesday videos, but I decided to just give you guys an extra story today for the people that are usually on my channel and my subscribers. So, special treat for y'all. For those of you that came over from TikTok, I just really wanted to tell this story in full because I feel like it's very important and it's insightful regarding how these situations happen. And I want to give you guys the full scope of the story because, you know, sometimes we hear bits and pieces, or we hear the aftermath of somebody being caught that we see as a monster, or we watch a full movie on like Hallmark or something that's like not real. And this one is the full through all the way story of how a teacher ended up getting to a student's mind and actually having a relationship with them, and even ended up sleeping with them. So let me just start with the story. This young lady, she was like 13, 14 years old. She came into the psych ward. She had what we call superficial cuts on her arm, which means that they are non-lethal cuts that, you know, people do to express whatever emotion they're going through. Some people like doing that in order to just see blood and to feel something that is painful but not lethal. That's a real thing. But the reason why she was doing it was because of this whole situation she was in. According to her parents, she got caught just having a relationship with an adult. They didn't know that that adult was the teacher. I'm going to tell you guys, as I kind of stated on TikTok, how I found out that the adult that she was with was in fact her teacher. But before we get to that, definitely make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe, and you gotta comment and let me know what you think about this. Give me your 2 cents, you know what I'm saying? And if you can't comment on that, then let me know. If you could eat any snack while you're watching this video, what would it be? Unless you're eating it right now, then tell me that. So she comes into the unit, she has these cuts on her arm, she's suicidal, and all we know is that this is over a relationship that her parents don't want her to have with an adult. So we're like, wow, this situation is already bad as it is. She's completely closed off. Staff is trying to interview her. Staff is trying to get answers on her. They're drilling her. They're telling her, hey, you're gonna be here longer if you don't work with us, just stuff like that. And she's just shutting down and shutting down and shutting down. My nickname was the Patient Whisperer. I don't like to think that I'll be able to talk to anybody that has any issue, but I do find simply that sometimes staff members make their agenda too rigid, and they talk to kids sometimes just like kids, even though they have complex minds and they're able to think in a lot of autonomous ways. So you gotta give it up to them for that. And if you approach them on some I have the answers, you don't, especially when they feel like they got something going, and a lot of times they do, they're not gonna trust you. They're not gonna open up. So when I decided to talk to her, first off, it was group. It was a group setting, making her feel comfortable. When I had different questions that I would bring out, I would call on them. Mind you, all the kids know that all the staff know what issues they have. So when I have that knowledge, that they have that knowledge, my biggest #1 thing coming out the gate is for them to understand that I do not judge you, that I accept you, and that there's nothing that you can tell me that you've done to stop me from looking you in the eye, talking to you, smiling at you. And that's hard to do because sometimes there's all types of people in there. But that was the type of precedent I set in group, and I knew that might soften her up in my classroom setting. It's also kind of sickening as I say that, because that's the very same tactic that some adults in the positions of authority use in order to get things that they want out of a student, especially one that is underage. But these tactics that that these kids are getting fooled by are supposed to be being used honestly. You know, so I started off the conversation with her because I talked to all the other kids, which made her not feel singled out. So when I got to her individually, I'm like, hey, what do you think about group? How are things going here? Making sure I'm not asking her questions about why she's here and where she doesn't think that's my agenda. So I can fill you in on how she ended up opening up and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Let's get to the meat. She saw that that's not what I was on, and I noticed she let her guard down and started to be more comfortable. And when she started talking about the relationship that she had with this adult, she was being very kind of, you know, guarded and secretive, but dipping her toe in the water to see if things were safe. And the moment she realized that I wasn't going to judge her for the fact that she liked an adult and that I was validating her and having an unconditional positive acceptance of her story, she opened up way more. And she said, okay, as we got to the details about how they related, she said, well, I want to tell you this because I do need help, but you have to, I have to trust you and that you're not going to tell any other staff. I couldn't promise her that, but I didn't want to tell her that and then shut all the conversation down. So I told her my biggest concern is just for your safety. Something else along that line that kind of gave her the peace of mind to continue, thank God. So she continues talking and she tells me this adult that she's actually seeing is her teacher. But rewind, she tells me the problem she's having at home. She said her dad stopped paying attention to her. He doesn't do things with her anymore. Her and her mom aren't doing good. Her dad and her mom aren't doing good. And she just felt very alone in this season. So she said she was slipping in school and her parents didn't even know this. It sounds like she was trying to get attention from her dad. Like, she's like, you know, my dad didn't even care that I wasn't passing whatever class that teacher that she was talking to taught. And she's like, and that's one of my favorite subjects. So here I am hearing the cry of help that this child is making, like, see me, notice me. And so she goes to her teacher for extra help after class, and the teacher says you can come for extra help. And you know, he's asking her, I notice your grades are going like this, what's going on, da da da. And she ends up opening up to him about what's going on at home. And he's like, all right, we'll stay after class and I'll help you get your work together and stuff. So meanwhile, they're building some type of companionship and things of that nature. And she's finding a source of comfort in this authority figure that is showing her attention, something she should be getting at home or getting in a safe, appropriate way in the school setting, because teachers are a support system as well, but that has limitations. So here's where the boundary lines gets crossed. I'm just listening to her talk to me. This is all her talking to me. She's telling me how he's also expressing how he's having issues with his wife at home and how they've been getting into a lot of arguments lately. And so they're just expressing to each other. That's already inappropriate. So one day the teacher says to her, I'm not going to be present after class today, but just leave your work on my desk and text me. And he gave her his number when you're done. And that's how he got in. So she texts him that he's done. He's saying thank you. And then they begin texting and building conversation and a rapport there. Eventually, you know, they're eating lunch together and develop some form of a friendship. This is very cringy to tell y'all. It's like gut wrenching for me because I have a child myself. But what ends up happening is somewhere or another down the road as they're building this chemistry, they end up kissing in the room. That's what she tells me. And after that, you know, the following week, he was saying how he could give her a ride home, you know. So he starts giving her rides and she's making excuses to her parents that, hey, I'm staying after school. I'm going to get a ride home with a friend, you know, this type of thing. And meanwhile, her parents don't even care. So she's kind of just rebelling, you know, in a sense. So he ends up saying at some points, like, because I was asking, like, how did you end up, you know, going to his house? He'd say, like, oh, I need to stop at my house real quick to grab such and such. And it went from that to like kissing in the car to hey, come in, I just got to get something real quick. And eventually they're having full-blown everything. Like, it's happening. And he was her first. So the attachment was real. She told me she felt weird about it because it's like, I know he said he was married and like he's wanting all this from me, but at the same time, you know, it's got to be real because he's being nice to me and he's helping me with my homework and he's helping me during the time that I'm going through right now. I'm like, okay. I said, so I see these things are happening. I see you have a very intimate attachment to this person that you don't just want to give away just because of the age difference. She's like, yeah, I mean, I feel like if it's helping me, why should this be wrong? Like, why is this wrong? Man, it broke my heart to hear her ask me that question. But I told her this. I said, let me ask you this. When you went to your teacher and you started expressing to him, were you looking for sexual encounters? She was like, no, I wouldn't say that. I was just like, oh, okay. I said this. If, let's say, things in a perfect world were going well at home, your dad was hanging out with you again, and You guys were going out together as a family and your parents weren't arguing. Do you think you'd be doing better in school? She's like, oh, definitely. Like, that probably has everything to do with it. Like, that's all I think about. And that's why I like my teacher so much. She connected it right back to the teacher. I'm like, man, he's got her because he's helped me. But I'm like, all right, stay focused, Jay, stay focused. I'm like, okay, cool. I told her, I said, do you think you would have expressed yourself to your teacher and stayed after class at all had you not had any problems going on at home that you felt needed to be talked about and fixed? She thought about it. She was like, probably not. Probably not. She's like, are you saying that I was just using him for something? I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not saying that. I said at the end of the day, like, teachers and counselors and staff members are supposed to be here for you in those moments. And you're supposed to be able to use them in a way that's positive, you know, to sometimes navigate these types of issues. Did you notice a change in you guys' relationship after he started telling you about things that was going on at his home with his wife? And she was like, yeah, I felt like at first when I was talking to him, I just felt like it was somebody else that could be like a father figure. Like, she said that. But then she said, like, when she realized he was having issues too, she thought like, man, maybe adults and kids aren't really that different. And that's why I thought it was cool to talk to him and how we understood each other and how we had something special. And so when I'm talking to him and listening to him about stuff, we just got closer and closer. And I think we started to fall in love. So I told her, I said, let me ask you this. If one of your good friends in this school, in your school, came up to you and told you that they were having issues at home, and then they went to go talk to their teacher about it, and then you find out that they've been sleeping together, what would you think about that? And she's like, I'd say the teacher's probably using her. And she goes and covers her mouth, and she starts to get teary-eyed, and she's just like, I mean, wow, I mean, I don't think that's what's going on, but like everything seems so real. He seems like such a nice guy and everything like that. And I told her, I said, no, 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 no. Like, I wouldn't say that he's not a nice guy. I wouldn't say that the advice and the support he gave you wasn't well intended. But I did say this. The moment it crossed over to being sexual, he has to jump over a lot of hoops to get to that as an adult. Legal, relational, personal. I said, how would you feel if you were over his house and his wife walked in on you guys? Would you be ashamed? She goes, oh my God, actually, I ended up meeting his wife and she's like so nice. And I was gonna ask him about that because she seems just like a nice person and not like what he described her to be to me. Whole time I'm like thinking in my head, duh, because he's gonna tell you what you need to hear to get you to do what he wants you to do. And I think it was starting to unfold and her eyes were tearing up and she was realizing that, wow, I messed up. I'm in here with superficial cuts on my arm all the way up in the hospital. My parents are very concerned about me and I'm starting to get their care and attention based on this whole fiasco. Meanwhile, this guy is out here and he might be doing this to somebody else. Turns out he was. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I told her, I know it's hard. I know you found a lot of support from this, but if you think about what this means for you and what this means for other students in your school, would you want this to be happening to anybody else? She says, wow, like I can tell it starts to set in. I don't know what was going on in her mind, but she just started to feel disgusted with herself. And she's like, I can't believe I did this. I can't believe that oh my gosh, this is so bad. This is so bad. And she's like, thank you. But like, how am I gonna fix this situation? Because like, you know, I had described to her how compromising of a position he put her in, you know, and if he cared about her relationship with her folks, he would be pushing her back to them and not bringing her into himself. If he cared about the relationship with his wife, he would be focusing on that and putting up boundaries and not allowing you into his home to do things with you. And it's complicated when all the emotions are swirled up and certain things feel right. Because around teenagehood is when kids realize that adults aren't necessarily heroes and they really have that complex way of thinking now as teenagers. And so like, thank goodness she ends up telling me the teacher's name. So I'm like, okay. And she tells me what class, and I already knew the school that she went to. So I said, thank you. I give all this information to the staff. I brief them on the situation of what's going on, and we don't have to tell her what we're doing, but for her life to not spiral out of control in a way where she doesn't feel like she has a say and that something's happening to her and she's not a part of the happening, I felt like she really needed to have a voice and a position in this. And so somebody to not just take the authority and say, this is what we're gonna do. That needs to happen, but in a way that still gives her inclusion, even if it's somewhat of an illusion. So I tell the staff, they are shocked. They're like, wow, Jay, you're the patient whisperer, da da da, but this is crazy. We need to alert the authorities and find out about this guy. So this is a long story, y'all, and I'm not trying to edit all of this stuff and post this whole long video to YouTube. So if you guys want to know what ended up happening legally with the teacher, because he was found, there were charges pressed, he was arrested, there were things found out that he was doing this to other girls. She did find out about that, and there was a whole reaction to that because this investigation kind of took place in the way that it did, and she was in the ward for a part of it, and the police had to come and interview her, and all of these things that happened. And even like, this is a very happy ending story too, y'all, because it could have just ended up messy. Usually after situations like this, sometimes it just adds more brokenness to the family and more separation and more strife, leading to more issues. But in this situation, I could say like it led to reconciliation. Her family realizing the issues they had, her dad going to protect and love on his daughter, and it was just a great situation. I can give you guys the details on that in a part 2 video to this if you so choose. So if you want part 2, then you need to let me know in the comment section, and you need to smash that like button so that I can know to bring part 2 ASAP. So let me know. I ain't responding until I see, you know, what I need to see. Otherwise, y'all just gonna get this cliffhanger. But I appreciate you guys watching this video.